tell you a story, retell the story about the first time we went to the temple in Idaho Falls. We weren't married in the temple when, at first. We were married in the yard at my family home, and people wondered about us because why aren't you married in the temple? You don't have all those bad habits and everything. What's the matter with you? Well, we finally got with it. And we took these lessons, temple ready, temple preparedness lessons, and it was a doctor. His father had been bishop, and he was a very nice fellow, and he just gave us the nicest, he got us so well prepared to go to the temple that I don't think anybody backed out, right?
I don't think so.
I don't think so. And one of the things that he asked us to do after the first lesson or so was to kneel at our bedside with our husbands and wives, and hold the hand, and that was terribly powerful for me. I hadn't done enough kneeling and praying anyway, but kneeling there beside him in the bedroom like that was just very, very moving, outstanding. So anyway, came time for us to go to the temple, and we lived in Baker City, Oregon. Excuse me. That's awful. We lived in Baker City, Oregon, and it was 7.5 hours, I think, to drive to Idaho Falls. And each couple had another couple as sponsors, I think they called them. So we were a big caravan and a big crowd. And when we were in the temple, in the room, well, our kids had to go with us because they had to be sealed to us, and we decided later that they had to stay in that room that they had for children for 7 hours that day. They had live sessions there in Idaho Falls, and
They were pretty patient.
they were very patient people, but they still remembered that it was a long time. And I hadn't been a temple worker then, of course, but later, after I had been a temple worker, I just couldn't imagine, because we had I think we had 12 couples. Don thinks it's more than that. But we had at least 12 couples there, I think, to be married and sealed, and we had our picture taken. Well, I mean, it must have been so. It must have been a terrible job for those people. They must have wondered what on earth has hit us to have 12 bride and grooms in one session, and to get them through the veil and so forth. It was just amazing, absolutely amazing. We all got out on the steps of the temple and had our picture taken, and we do have that picture, and I was looking for it just before we came, but we didn't find it. Anyway, we were certainly glad that people finally got us into the temple marriage, and our oldest son was 13, I believe, and that would put the youngest one at 7. We had 4. And so I'm telling this to my own children and grandchildren, as well as to the people who might view this.
One of the nicest things I can remember about things we did together was when our children and our grandchildren all got together and practiced walk in the light, practiced it twice, and the next day they performed it in sacrament meeting. And our son Tony, who was a good singer, he kind of got it up, and he had the solo part. Jenny, our daughter, was on the piano. Davey, his son, was on the violin. And Tony's wife, Cindy, directed it. And I was in the bishopric at that time, so I got to introduce all of my kids and grandkids to that, and that really meant a lot to me. Introduced them to the crowd, and then they took over and sang that song, and it's beautiful. It's one song I once sung at my funeral.
And then we did get it on video, of course.
Yeah, we got it on video.
Play it often.
Another thing I remember quite vividly is Grandpa's magic sack. I would get a grocery bag and fill it half full of candy, and the kids could come up and they could reach in there and feel around. They couldn't peek. They couldn't see what was in there, but they could feel and try and find the one they wanted. And this would go on for a while, and some of them would take too long, so I kind of limited their time after a while. And also limited the times they could do it to 2 a day. And I'm sure all of them remember that magic sack.
One trick you had was that you had somebody pick one out for somebody else
Yeah.
after a while, so that they wouldn't
Had the person
didn't
in
take
the
too long.
person in the front of the line would reach in and pick out one. He'd give it to the one behind him, then he would go to the tail end of the line. So that worked out pretty good. One thing we did along with that was really nice, a little hard on Billy. She, I think we decided for about 12 Christmases, she made pajamas for everybody. Sewed them.
Jam-ups, I call them.
Yeah.
Pajamas and warm-ups.
And I think the most striking set that she made was, what am I trying to say?
You don't mean Superman?
Superman,
Oh.
yeah. She made Superman pajamas for everybody. And the little kids just loved those. They'd run around with their capes flying behind them.
Grown-ups and kids, we made
Yeah.
them for everybody. I think I made maybe 22, 3, or maybe even 25 outfits the last time I did.
She sewed a long, long time.
But you were going to tell about cutting the ribbon, weren't you?
Yeah, cutting the ribbon was a big tradition we had. We would put the kids all to sleep, and after they got into bed, we'd put a ribbon across the doorway, or in the house where we had a stairway, we'd put it across the stairwell. And then in the morning, when everybody got up, and of course they got up way before we did,
But they were patient.
they were all huddled there at the ribbon, and the littlest one got to cut the ribbon. And sometimes they couldn't do it, so then the next one in line would help them. But the little one finally got it cut. And then they all poured in toward their stockings. And that started our big Christmas day. One thing that we've always been very blessed with is the fact that we've had a very musical family. And we have several that play the piano very well, several that play other instruments, and quite a few that are very good singers. So we had a lot of fun, a lot of song fests at home when we get together. And of course we always took the group out caroling. That was the thing we did every Christmas, was to go caroling. And it was nice because the kids got to see some of the people they hadn't seen for a year or two. And some of the people didn't know whether to accept us or not. They didn't recognize some of the first ones that were in front of the line, and once in a while we got the door shut in their face. But the nicest thing we did probably, we all went out to the old folks home, and we sang and played for them.
Nursery home.
And it's hard to tell how many of them could really understand what was going on. I know some of them couldn't, but a lot of them, you could tell, were really touched by that, and it touched all of us just to be able to do that.
Well, that's about enough, I guess, for this time.
I think so.